Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends and colleagues. I'm Margo LaZaro, President and Chair of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development, New York, and founder and CEO of the SDG Impact Awards community. And I'm also a coordinating partner for UN 2020 in support of the United Nations 75th anniversary for the UN We Need. This year, the United Nations declared 2020 the beginning of the decade of action for the UN Sustainable Development Goals to its Middle Development Agenda, and COVID-19 pandemic happened. Some of us have stepped up to meet this global challenge by developing new partnerships to further engage our groups with the SDGs by finding more solutions and better ways to support our communities. In fact, we have a motto: turn your passions into actions for change, because we're dedicated to achieve these goals. We have pivoted and changed how we are connecting with our various partners with plans of action. It is now my pleasure to welcome you to our roundtable discussion to address the impact of the pandemic on our communities, resulting in global health crises, conflicts, inequalities, and other concerns, and how we can assist in building back better and stronger. I'll ask each of our distinguished experts to briefly introduce themselves and to share their particular focus and engagement with the SDGs. First, let's meet Laurie Adams, CEO of Women for Women International. Laurie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Margo. It's an honor to be here on this important occasion, particularly as it's the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and multilateralism is more important now than ever. Over the last 26 years, Women for Women International has worked with over 500,000 women living in fragile and conflict-affected states, facing poverty, violence, and multiple forms of discrimination. These are the very women that we've identified are the most likely to be left behind. We have a very practical program, an intensive program that brings tangible results in the area of increased earnings and savings, improved health and well-being, more decision-making power, and connections for support to women who, before our interventions, are in extreme poverty. Now, Margo, would you like me to talk a little bit more now, or just a very basic introduction first?
A basic introduction would be good, and then we'll come back to that. But thank you for asking. I appreciate that. So thank you, and now we'll come to Michael Collins, Executive Director of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Margo. So the Institute for Economics and Peace is a non-profit, non-partisan research institute. We're dedicated to shifting the world's focus to peace as a positive, tangible, and achievable measure of human well-being and progress. We do that primarily through quantitative analysis, essentially analyzing what are the most peaceful countries on earth, and more importantly, what do they have in common. So in and around that theme, we produce a variety of reports, including the Global Peace Index, Global Terrorism Index, country reports such as the Mexico Peace Index, and most recently the Ecological Threat Register, which basically compares upcoming levels of ecological threat around the world to countries' measure of resilience.
Thank you, Michael. And now Mandy Sangre, philanthropist and global activist, over to you.
Sorry, hadn't unmuted. Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. I'm Andy Sanghera. I'm an international human rights activist who specializes on tackling gender-based violence, and actually have done a lot of work with migrants across the world and tackle harmful cultural practices. And actually one of the things I'm also passionate about is actually leaving no one behind, especially the next generation, and have spent the last sort of 30 years empowering young victims to sort of thrive after abuse, and have written a lot of government policies, and one of the founders of the UK Forced Marriage Unit. And it's a great honor to be here again supporting the World Humanitarian Forum. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandy. And now let's meet Aman Rahmatullah, the CEO of Teach for Afghanistan. Over to you. You have the floor, Aman.
Salam everyone. This is Rahmatullah Arman, CEO and founder of Teach for Afghanistan organization. It's a great honor in being here and talking with you all. Teach for Afghanistan, we provide quality education by tackling education inequality. We provide quality education by recruitment of highly qualified young graduates. We train them and we place them inside most needy schools. It's a fellowship program, a lifelong leadership journey that they go through. At Teach for Afghanistan, we are based in 3 provinces of Afghanistan, in Eastern and Northern and Central in Kabul itself. Until today, Teach for Afghanistan has been able to recruit 340 fellows and 293 fellows have completed 2 years of fellowship, and they are alumni of Teach for Afghanistan. Teach for Afghanistan have been able to impact over 60,000 children, of which majority are girls and women. That's because in Afghanistan, in my country, women are most affected by the 4 decades of war and the challenges of education. So the dropout is higher than boys. That's because of the lack of female teachers inside classrooms. So that's one big reason. Majority of the fellows of Teach for Afghanistan are women, and majority of the students we impact were in the placement schools are girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahman. Now, Professor Alberto Cerconi, President of People-Centered Approach Institute and the Chairman of the Board of World Academy of Art and Sciences. Over to you, Alberto.
I'm glad to be in this panel with all of you doing such great work. The Academy was started by Albert Einstein, Bertrand Russell, the first director of UNESCO, World Health Organization, ILO, etc., just after the Second World War. And ever since we've been, I wasn't there, I was born in 46, we've been trying to be part of the solution and not of the problem, mainly addressing issues like disarmament, person-centered education, and we collaborate with a lot of organizations. Also, we have a program with the United Nations, and we're going to do a second international conference of fostering leadership, sustainable leadership for the 21st century. And actually, I'm glad to be among so many leaders that are doing great work. Thank you as a citizen. I'm very glad that there are people like you.
Thank you, Alberto. It's a pleasure to be with you as well. So we have an overarching question here for all of you. And I'd like you all to share your insights on this question, and you can take longer with your answer so you can fully address it. What are the biggest setbacks your organizations have faced with addressing the SDGs since the pandemic happened? Again, this is an opportunity for you to share more about what you do, and also how you, maybe just how it has impacted you, and if you had any new solutions to how you approach this topic. And first, Laurie, we're going to go to you, and you have the floor. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, our program is entirely about bringing women together out of isolation into groups to learn together, to earn together, to create connections for support. And so, of course, we were fundamentally disrupted by the pandemic and the inability to bring women together. So across the 8 countries in which we intervene directly, and the several more countries, for example, now currently with Women Now in Syria, where we are supporting women's rights organizations to support those in acute conflict, we found, of course, that our entire way of supporting women had to be completely changed. And I kind of say, we work with primarily non-literate women, and they are chosen deliberately for being those who are most excluded and most marginalized. And so what I am absolutely proudest of is the way in which our teams on the ground have managed to figure out new ways to support people. So for example, in Iraq, where people are most connected, we've been able to use Viber and other online services to continue coaching and mentoring services, and even to take our entire social empowerment training online. Iraq, of course, faced some of the most stringent lockdowns, and so keeping those lines open as women faced increased conflict, domestic violence in the home, as people were even more isolated, many of them already displaced and isolated from communities, was incredibly important for people's mental health, their ability to navigate, to get the correct information. In Afghanistan, the team was able to listen to the women and the men that we serve. We have a men's engagement program, and so we're engaged with both women and men, who said that getting practical hygiene kits and support and information out was just as important as the cash and the training that we normally do. And so thousands and thousands of hygiene kits were distributed, and very carefully distributed in ways that kept people at a distance, but allowed them to make those connections. In South Sudan, our team took to the radio, reached over 300,000 people with public health messages and encouragement to continue, but also managed to figure out ways to continue even cash to people. An important part of our intervention with ultra-poor women is cash transfers. We do know that with the most extreme and vulnerable and marginalized women, cash transfers are not enough. They need the psychosocial support when they've been deeply affected by violence and conflict and separation, economic support for women who haven't worked outside of the home, new skills. And so just really, you know, we talk about COVID actually as a greater accelerator of innovation, things that we thought we might be able to achieve 3 years from now, being able to provide support at a distance were accelerated. We were able to build on, we had done an Ebola response in DRC, we are based out of Bukavu in the east. And there, you know, Congo is actually, this is one of the things to recognize. Sometimes people talk about, there's an article I read recently in which there's sort of magical thinking about why are people in Africa and Asia less affected? Is it because of some genetic reason? When in fact it's because many countries have been dealing with public health crises for decades and poor health systems. And so we have the ways, we know how to reach out to people, and people have been incredible at adapting and innovating in the face of crisis throughout their lives. And so in some cases, like in Rwanda where we work, in fact, the government has had a very well managed response. In other places, for example, in Congo, where we had just been part of the Ebola response, we already had systems in place to reach people. And so we were able to build on those. So the impact of COVID is disastrous. It's frankly disastrous, as we all know. And for the women we serve, it's particularly the economic crisis. We all know that the vast majority of people in the informal workforce are women, 74 to 89% of the estimates in sub-Saharan Africa. 60% of the women we serve rely on smallholder farming. And markets were completely disrupted. The ability to sell, the ability to trade, the ability to access. And this is of course compounded by the trade issues with China, the increase in oil prices. So Iraq and Nigeria saw prices increasing as well. And so all of the SDGs remain critically important. It's critically important that we heal our planet. It's because we now also seeing, of course, the impact of climate change. It's critically important that women are in decision making. It's critically important that we have health infrastructure and that we have women a full part of the labor force. So COVID exacerbated all of that. It laid bare and made even more obvious the necessity for us to take action together as a global community. It showed us our resilience. It showed, you know, for those of us who are nonprofits, we also had to figure out to reach our supporters. You know, we were just poised to help open the UN Women's CSW. That was one of the first global event to have, and we all had to pivot and figure out how to continue to share lessons and get messages out and do advocacy in new forms. So in the face of this really horrific additional pressure on the people we serve, there is the hope of the resilience. And there is the proof that what we've learned over the last 26 years, and we're very lucky, we have 70% unrestricted money that comes from individual supporters who sign up as sisters to support individual women. That has allowed us to give the flexibility to respond over time. And that's what's allowed us to put this mix, a holistic mix, just like the SDGs are a holistic mix of economic interventions, health interventions, power, really focusing on women's power across all spheres and bringing those together. So I'm very excited to be here on this panel with this cross-section of people working across peace and education and economics. It isn't coming together and finding that resilience and finding that connectedness and responding together that we are going to find the ways that COVID can be an accelerant rather than a block to our progress towards our 2030 commitments.
Thank you so much, Laurie. You said so much, and congratulations to you for all the work that you are doing on the ground. As you said, innovation, acceleration, and involvement. Congratulations, really wonderful. Armin, please, over to you. Same question, and express yourself and how you feel. You have the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like all other countries, obviously Afghanistan has been also very much hit hard by the COVID-19, but at the same time by the increasing insecurity and the challenges as well. So we take both of them all together in our daily lives. Especially talking about the COVID, the impact that it had, it was severe, it was disastrous, especially on the education sector. As within Teach for Afghanistan, we work with schools, we work with the teachers, we work inside communities. We, at the same time, are not like so many other countries where with the pandemic, how they continued with education and with the situation was they had some other options like using internet, virtual meetings and trainings, and still they were able at least to catch up with what the COVID had caused. But in Afghanistan, due to the lack of access of people to internet, to smartphones, especially the teachers, the children, the schools, we did not have this opportunity to really continue with that. So at Teach for Afghanistan, I'm so much glad that the alumni of Teach for Afghanistan, the fellows of Teach for Afghanistan, they came up with local innovative ideas, something that the government of Afghanistan, the donors, the partners and the solutions overall that was all taking part in Afghanistan, like the internet, online the teachings, the systems, and at the same time, like sometime the teaching from televisions, and where none of these were working, they came up with a solution where like providing easy curriculums. So each fellow, they prepared something very much at home, like from the curriculum. They actually simplified and prepared some easy curriculums. They printed that and they distributed. So they visited students' house. Each house is going to reaching their students and distributing that to the students. That was the only way we could reach each and every student. So no one is left out. Sharing their contact numbers and being in contact with them, with their families to answer their questions and then follow up with their homeworks and everything. That was one way. Beside that, some of the alumni of Teach for Afghanistan who were working with some of the TV channels with Ministry of Education, they started teaching through television. So only for those children who have access to a television, who are watching, so they could really learn from that. The COVID impact is severe, and it will continue as we are predicting that by the time schools are still closed, with only 3 grades are allowed to go, and that's like the high school. We are predicting that maybe a huge number of female teachers and will leave the teaching positions, and maybe a huge number of students will also drop because of poverty that has caused due to the COVID and beside other factors. And because the challenges that they have faced, the government was unable to really provide solutions to them. So they are unable to continue education. So these are the challenges that we are predicting to come. At the same time, talking about overall SDGs, like in Afghanistan itself, the challenge that has happened is that the government in Afghanistan has taken the overall leadership to adopt the SDGs and leading the SDGs. Like suppose like having the ministers sit around at a table would not have much of a multi-sectoral approach, where people's voice is absent, where people, local leaders, the people who are really being affected by the COVID, by the challenges, and the progress of SDG that's so slow, so people are not involved in that. While the government's role should be more facilitated for all stakeholders, like including the government agencies, NGOs, civil society, policy and research institutions, academia, the media, and the public to engage in SDG nationalization, alignment, and implementation. Like at Teach for Afghanistan, regarding the SDGs itself, we believe that the 2030 global agenda is about the people and the planet. And thus Afghanistan SDGs should be in the hands of the people. And we need local leaders who understand the context, who are from the people, who are among the people, who have lived the challenges and have the collective and inclusive solutions to that. Like at looking at the impact that the COVID has brought on the SDGs, the ongoing insecurities, war, and all other challenges. At Teach for Afghanistan, what we are doing, we are building local leaders, the local leaders who can address these challenges, who understand these challenges, who are from the people and who can really solve these challenges. So what at Teach for Afghanistan we do, we help them with through these 2 years of fellowship with a learning journey. And the journey itself starts from the recruitment itself, where we recruit the most promising future leaders of all academic disciplines and career interests who demonstrate the core competencies to positively impact student achievement and become lifelong leaders able to systematic change. So at Teach for Afghanistan, we provide fellows with intensive ongoing training and support to accelerate their development as transformational teachers and leaders who are committed to changing the life trajectories of their students. The grassroots experience exposes fellows to the realities of Afghanistan's educational system and builds in them the passion and the commitment to catalyze change in the long run. A journey which begins in their role as alumni once they complete 2 years of fellowship and continues as they identify their piece of puzzle of education inequity and attain positions of leadership and influence at all levels of education system and outside it in the private, public, and non-for-profit sectors. So as a solution to this challenge, we also see like the alumni of Teach for Afghanistan, as I said, about the role that they have played and they are playing. So they are vital leadership pool who are highly competent, passionate, socially conscious people who share a powerful common experience in schools, who forms a new community of leaders to address internal education factors as transformational teachers inside schools, leaders in education institutions, and work from outside education system to address the external factors affecting the overall system that has caused due to all these challenges. At this moment, while sharing about our alumni, we have right now at all these challenges going on, we have alumni who are currently working with Ministry of Education, working on SDG 4. We have alumni, a female alumni of Teach for Afghanistan who have become a school principal, showing an example of leadership where in a context like Afghanistan, where in a community, in a village like Afghanistan, where to show a woman can become a leader, a woman can lead, like promoting equality and equal education. That's very much. We do also have our alumni in media who are spreading messages, who are trying to really challenge some of the beliefs and also raise awareness among people about the.
Actually, we just lost him. Okay.
Oh, hopefully he'll come back.
Oh my gosh. Okay, go ahead, Andy.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so
I'm going to ask you just to take a little less time, everyone, only because we do want to do at least one more question.
Okay, no problem. Sorry. So Laurie's talked about some of the work that I was going to talk about, but actually one of the things that we have seen in England that women have been put in very vulnerable situations where women may have wanted to leave the home due to domestic violence or harmful practices, but actually what's happened is that actually the pandemic, a lot of women due to fear have ended up staying with the perpetrators in home, and there's been a real increase in domestic violence and gender-based violence across the UK and around the world. We've also found that actually usually in the UK there is a real increase of FGM and early child forced marriage, where young people are put under pressure to go out of the country. So one of the saving graces has been that young people have not been able to leave the UK, but actually we have concerns about young people been put under a lot of emotional pressure, and because children were not at school, and some of the young people have not gone on to university, have not gone back to college. So there is some real concerns that actually young people have been left at home with families who may be, you know, on the verge of trying to force their child into a marriage. One of the other big increases that we have seen in the UK has been issues around human trafficking. As we come out of the pandemic, there will be a greater need for cheaper goods, cheaper labour, cheaper sex, and people will be out abusing people. And we know that human trafficking is a multi-billion-pound business already, and we know that things are going to get worse. And we are trying to do some work across the globe and trying to address this issue. But I know that this is going to be something that we're going to take us a while to try and address. One of the other things that I'm very passionate about is about empowering the next generation and supporting young people. And we've also seen that young people across the globe have been really affected by the pandemic, and young people have not gone to school. I did a safeguarding summit in Africa with 17 countries, and it was really shocking to see where now young girls are not going to go back to school because they've ended up becoming pregnant for whatever reason, through rape or been, you know, in relationships and not realizing. And young people have resorted to survival sex, where young girls are, you know, trying to feed themselves. There's been issues where families are not letting people go out of the home because they're worried about catching COVID, bringing it back. Some communities don't even believe that COVID is real. They believe that it's a hoax. And there have been like faith leaders exploiting and taking advantage of people and saying to them, this is not an illness, it's just a spell on you, you need to pay us. And this has been so much work that has been done to try and educate people. As for the Sustainable Development Goals, I feel like that we have a lot of work to go and to do. And I feel like this has just been a bit of a hindrance, and it's been a real backward step for us, because actually this year was a very important year, Margo, and I know that you would have been one of the driving forces, and as Laurie would have been around the Beijing 25 agenda, and we would have all been in Mexico and going to Paris, and none of those things have happened. So it's really important that we advocate and make sure that our voices are heard, that we still are able to lobby and make a difference and make sure that the agenda is taken forward. I know that we've been told that it's going to happen, but again, we don't know, because we've been told today in the UK that we might be on the verge of another 6-month lockdown. So again, civil society is going to be affected, that it may not be allowed to travel to the US and travel and take part in CSW. So I feel like as much as there's been some great work being done, this is a real backward step. I know that people are saying that COVID has been an equalizer. I don't believe it is, because it affects people from BME communities very differently to the Caucasian community. You know, the death figures are showing you that minorities have been affected. That's because of the way that they live in large numbers in the UK. There's been issues where they are frontline staff in care and in the hospitality and in the shops and other sectors. So we know that this is affecting people. So I feel like that all we can do is keep putting ourselves forward to do the work, make sure that everyone is signing up to the agenda of 2030 and actually try and get back on track, and all government leaders are coming on board. And again, this year, we were supposed to have the climate summit in England, and that's now been postponed by another year as well. So I do feel like it's really important that we keep the conversation going and that we leave no one behind. On that note, I'm going to let you carry on, Margo, because I would like everyone to have a say, because I'm conscious of the time.
Thank you so much, Mandy. And you're right, there have been inequalities across the board. Well, you know, there were inequalities already, and the pandemic really magnified that many times over. And I really hope that we go beyond compensation and really go into action. I'm glad to see that Armin joins us, but we're going to come back to you in a bit. I hope you don't mind. We're going to keep moving. But thank you for all that you shared. I mentioned in the chat, and for all that you're doing. Great work. And glad you got back. So now I'm going to go to Michael, taking it in another direction, and we'll back to you in a bit, Roberto. So Michael, go ahead, please. And you'll have, I'm going to now put a time frame on this for 5 minutes, okay? Thank you.
That's excellent, Margo. Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, as a research institution, we've had the luxury of being sort of largely unaffected COVID-19. So what I like to talk about is essentially kind of sort of how we see COVID through the work, through the research that we do. So a large part of what we do is study the socioeconomic impacts of threat, and in particular their potential impact on levels of peacefulness. So, you know, threats can result in a crisis when a country is unable to either absorb or adapt to them. And then these crises often result in tensions and even violence, right? That's something that we see on an everyday basis. One of the challenges about countries specifically caught in the violence trap is that the violence sort of rightly consumes the attention of the government. This can then weaken the provision of services, and then that leads to more group grievances, and that leads to conflict, which weakens institutions, and so on and so forth. Many of these countries get caught in a negative feedback loop. So in the case of COVID-19, that can be a significant contributor to that as well. So, you know, just sharing some examples, research-related examples of the impact of COVID-19. As we may know already, gun sales in the US, for example, have increased significantly over the past 6 months. We're yet to see what the impact of that is going to be, but we've already seen various protests against lockdowns, both in the US, but also in the European Union and places like Brazil, for example. There's been a generalized increase in riots and general strikes related to food shortages and increased prices. This is largely due to sort of cuts in the global supply chain. Increased political polarization, and also larger government crackdowns, right? Cracking down on protests and more restriction of personal freedoms as well. And then there's the broader elements that you've all been talking about, which is the general increase in unemployment due to sort of an impact on the tourism industry and business more broadly, which ultimately leads to, or is already leading to, a decrease in GDP and an increase in poverty globally, or at least for all of the countries and people affected. So in terms of international repercussions.
Move on. Thank you, Michael, but we'll come back to you. We'll move on to Alberto. Alberto, you have the floor, and thank you. And now we lost Michael. Michael's done.
Anyhow, I strongly agree what I heard up to now. And of course, it's evident that the coronavirus, the COVID-19 is a tremendous impact. I hope we are not blinded by the fact that we've been suffering for many other pandemia that have equally serious tolls. Racism, oppression, discrimination, lack of equal opportunity. All this are pandemically creating burden for human beings and destroying human capital. If COVID shows something important, I think that made evaporate some of the illusion that people could, you know, separate from the rest of other people, might be less lucky and avoid the problems. COVID show in a dramatic way that we are all connected and that either we win this challenge together or we fail. I have a lot of friends and colleagues around the world, and I have some friends that are very wealthy and they're dead because it's not your bank account that counts in this kind of, which seems right to me. So this COVID-19, like every serious crisis, is also the opportunity to wake up to get out the hypnotism, self-hypnotism of mechanicistic, reductionistic thinking and behavior. I think that we have a chance to use our strengths and foster grassroots leadership. Leadership of people that more than leading know how to listen, more than leading know how to give a good example with how they walk their talk. So education, leadership, they are all intersecting all the other sector, and that's what we at the World Academy been doing for a long time, and we are connecting it, and you might be interested to see also our here the colleague and guest what we're doing, and also we are open to participation. So a lot of people, a lot of groups, including my institute, are in partnership with the United Nations, promoting and fostering those things that you're saying. And I think you have already visibility, but you should even have more, because these are important messages. And we have our weight, but none of our association, institution is really powered enough to do it alone. So I think one of the best things is to stay connected, to collaborate, and to create a sustainable future. But let me say the last thing. I think it's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to be good-willed. We have to have a sustainability inside our heart and inside our minds, to be in peace with the different part of ourselves. In that way, we will be more active and successful in more than preaching, giving example in everyday life. How we relate to ourselves, people, and the world is very, very important. And I hope that all together we can take the challenge and create a sustainable world.
Thank you so much, Alberto. We have several challenges now. We have the challenge of the SDGs and COVID-19, the pandemic. And we also need to be ready, because there may be another one coming down the road, another pandemic. So we really must pay attention to what is happening here. And it really has helped us to really look to others and support others and open up new innovations, as you were saying. This is really, in many ways, it's been helpful. But yes, there are inequalities, and it has been detrimental to so many. I actually lost a cousin to this, and I'm really want to get involved with really supporting solutions for how we support people in the marginalized areas. So I'm going to come back to Michael quickly, and then I'm going to go back to Armin. I'm going to give you about a minute to finish your thought, because that was terrible what happened to you, and then we'll come back to Armin. So do you want to complete your thought now that you had as you lost the connection?
Yeah, sure thing. Not sure what
I'm going to give you about a minute so we can come back to, like a final wrap up for everybody.
Yeah, well, just to feed off what Alberto mentioned, I think he's absolutely right. This is just kind of sort of, coronavirus is just one of the many crises out there that, we're hearing a lot about this one because it's global in nature, but there are much more hard-hitting crises that affect individual countries every day, right? Some of these are sort of immediate, such as like refugee crisis or natural disasters, and some sort of take longer to develop, like food insecurity or water stress and population growth. But essentially, a lot of the characteristics of resilience to these crises are the same. So being able to kind of find ways of building resilience to COVID can benefit you in a variety of different ways. Part of the work that the Institute does is specifically research around this domain, right? What is the secret sauce, if you will, of the countries that are best able to respond to a variety of different kinds of crisis? But unfortunately, Margo, 1 minute doesn't give me the ability to be able to share the secret sauce. So
what I'm going to say is, why don't you do your wrap up, or no, this is a much longer question, and 1 hour certainly would do any of us justice at this point. Do you want to go ahead and take a little bit more time, and then we'll come back to Armin, and then we'll do a wrap up for everybody.
Sure thing. So for the past 15 years, we've been performing statistical analysis to determine what makes societies more peaceful, right? More prosperous, more resilient. And broadly speaking, we find that they have eight things, right? They have a well-functioning government, they have equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, good relations with neighbors, high levels of human capital, acceptance of the rights of others, low levels of corruption, and a sound business environment. We call these the pillars of positive peace. Now, importantly, when we sort of look at these and the way that they interact and they reinforce each other systemically. And we see that the countries that most effectively build resilience to all forms of crisis do so by making small and simultaneous nudges to all of these pillars. So this can kind of sort of have implications in the way that we approach development or build resilience to future crisis. You know, by sort of looking at this through the lens of positive peace, we can envisage much broader interventions, potentially even sort of in unrelated aspects. For example, if we take the SDGs, free flow of information, which is a critical pillar in peaceful societies, largely is not included in the SDGs, and it's not the first area that you would consider to focus. And then secondly, modulating the size and the scope of your investment, not over-investing significantly in any individual pillar, in any individual SDG target, but very much maintaining that holistic approach, which is something that I'm sure we all agree with. And then just lastly, to say that to a certain extent also embrace complexity and correlation, because we're always trying to get down to the ultimate causality of what is causing us to not be able to deal with crises. Yeah, that could be a mug's game.
Thank you for sharing your insights on that. It's really appreciated, and I'm really glad you were able to make it back. Armin, why don't you take a couple minutes and wrap up what you were trying to say earlier until we can come back. You need to unmute.
Thank you very much.
We'll take like a couple of minutes and then we'll do wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's good. So thank you very much. Just wanted to say, like, that obviously the COVID, the impact will continue for years to come, that it has left us, and the challenges that we have had due to the war, poverty, and all other challenges that we have had. So the impact will be, and the challenges will be several years ahead, and it will be a continuing challenge that we will be going ahead with it. We are glad that we have been able to produce leaders who are contributing to solutions, to very localized solutions, and contributing to the majority of the SDGs, like by being good teachers, qualified teachers, to the SDG 4 by promoting equality, to SDG 5, and then to the WASH facility, and also helping students and their families, parents coming up with better solutions, learning better ways of savings and income, and generating revenues from limited resources that they have, helping them come over poverty and other challenges that they have. So overall, we are glad that we are producing these leaders from Teach for Afghanistan who are building local movements inside these villages. They raise awareness, they make people have their voice, and they make these movements possible, so we can ask and we can question the progress of the SDGs in Afghanistan. We can help in its progress and overall contribute in a majority of them, either directly or indirectly. So yes, that's it.
I was looking for some questions to see if any questions did come in. I don't see any at the moment. Unless they've been chatting with you in the chat yourselves. I would like to just come back to each of you and have you give a closing thought as to what would be next steps that you think we should do that maybe we haven't approached here on this topic. Something you haven't said already that could be a next way to move. So I'm going to now ask Mandy to start first.
So one of the things is, like, we've talked a little bit about inequalities, and one of the things that we have realized that gender equality, women were already been paid nearly 0.25% less than men in some communities, and some women in America, we know, like Afro-Caribbean and Latino women, are paid a lot less than men in the dollar. So one of the things that we need to be looking at is actually people who have been affected in the workplace and how we better support them. How do we better support young people, especially the class of 2020, that they're not left behind? Because actually we want equality, we want to look at supporting people, then we need to be looking at the social and the economic impact of people as well on their lives. Because one of the things that we have seen during the pandemic is that not just the violence, but actually women have been left behind financially as well, where they've had to give up work, where they've now becoming caregivers, they've ended up becoming teachers for so many months. They've not been able to work, or if they have worked, they've been let go because they worked in the industries that were not well paid anyway, like the hospitality and things like that. So all I would say is that we don't forget anybody, we leave no one behind, that we all work in partnership. That was be my point. So thank you again. It's been a great honor, great privilege, and well done, Margo. It's been an honor for you supporting us. Thank you.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you, Mandy. And it's a pleasure to have met you and become friends with you. And I hope as we go on that we all get to work together again, and I get to further support what you're doing beyond this 1 hour. Alberto, I'm going to come to you now because, you know, go right ahead and express yourself and how you feel. Thank you. You have about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I would make just an example, not of a poor country, a very rich one like United States. What I was saying about pandemic. Billions of dollars are wasted every year, and enormous suffering perpetrated to human beings, especially kids, and it's called trauma. Trauma from violence in the family, violence from peers, neglect. So these are the hidden pandemic. I think that to be aware of this coronavirus pandemic that every day is hitting the news, we should also foster awareness that we have been having continuous pandemia that are really creating enormous suffering and cost and incredible damages. Of course, again, it's not only this, the lack of women opportunity or gender equality, the persecution of people that are not in the majority of the sexual orientation. You know, we have so many problems, and unless we bring it all together in a holistic, systemic, interdisciplinary, and intersectorial action involving not only the people that already believe it, like here we are, but the real people in terms of the people that are just in the field, in the butcher shop. I mean, this is the last call that this planet have to wake up and work together to stop being part of the problem and becoming to be of the solution. Actually, I'm personally very impressed. I want 1 million people more that are doing your job. If we had more people, certainly we can really manage better what we're doing. But we need to involve more people from the grassroots. And I think, you know, not glib, but women, you know, should be helped to become leaders and people that are in the minorities. That is a great opportunity to have everybody contribute to a more just, equal, and sustainable society. And this is, you know, in the sustainable goals. So let's really do it, but not piecemeal, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is not going to work. We needed to put it all together and walk the talk.
Thank you so much, Alberto. You know, all of the SDGs are interchangeable, they're interconnected, and it is our best roadmap forward to achieve, you know, a better world for all of us in many ways. And and women are stepping up, I will say. They are doing more leadership roles in many government, grassroots. We all matter. Everybody's important. The SDGs are for everyone. I'm now going to turn to Laurie. Laurie, You have a couple minutes to share your insights. Thank you so much. And we look forward to working with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Margo. I think you've made one of my points that I wanted to make, which is that the best preventative measure for this pandemic would have been the achievement of the SDGs. If we had in place these goals, then we would have had the health systems and the economies and the resilience that would have allowed millions less people to be affected. I want to make a point about humanitarian response. And this crisis is our opportunity to do it the way we know it needs to be done, by locally rooted actors who know their context, who know the people, who know the languages, who have the relationships, not by outsiders being flown in, and with a long-term developmental approach. Because again, the best preventative measure and response to this humanitarian crisis is in fact the longer-term development goals. I want to add to what Michael said about resiliency. Resiliency, because we work in trauma, because we work with women who have been traumatized, and it's only through resiliency that they are able to make it through. We are in fact now, we have a couple of random control trials that have proven our impact in 1.6 times earnings for women, greater connections to support, decision-making. But now what we want to look at is to prove what we've seen, which is that the resilience factor is women's belief in themselves, their ability that they can get through, and their connections to other women for support. Think about what's made you resilient for the crisis yourself. It's your community. And it's your ability yourself to believe that you can make it through. It's mental health. Mental health is critically important. And so I think we need to really bring how women feel about themselves and their connections to others into our understanding of resiliency. And we need to bring our developmental approach and and people on the ground. People, all the thing Mandy was talking about, how people don't believe this is actually happening. We see it in the US with this belief that you don't need masks and all kinds of misinformation. On the ground, you need people who are trusted, already have relationships to be passing on information. And those are people in local partners or local organizations or organizations like ourselves that are deeply rooted. So build on what already exists. Don't come flying in with new programs. Final point, advocacy continues to be very, very important around all of our, the anniversaries that we're celebrating this year, the 75th anniversary, the 25th anniversary of Beijing Plus 25. We had just 2 days before the pandemic was launched, launched a policy and advocacy report called Unseen, Unheard, in which we said that the striking feature of the last 25 years in which we've been trying to implement the Beijing Agenda for Action has actually been the lack of the prioritization of the specific needs and rights of the most marginalized women in fragile and conflict-affected states. Women are not one homogeneous group, and we are part of the solution, not just something to be analyzed. As someone said in one of our policy forums, why do people keep saying how women have been impacted by COVID? What about what women think about, what the most marginalized women think about what needs to be done? So we're out of time, but I invite you to go and look at our Unseen, Unheard report. There are 5 points that we have reinforced in the COVID-19 briefing. I will not make them now. It'll be a teaser for you to go and look. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be part of this interesting conversation.
Thank you. We will stay in touch, and I hope that they can have a connection to your website or anything that you're working on. Guys, you have like 1.5 minutes each. Please go for it. Michael, you're first, or 2 minutes. We're down to the wire now.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Margo. So, yeah, unfortunately, we've got the job of sort of tracking the crisis, the impact of the crisis will have on levels of violence. We've also just finished a report which gives us sort of a clear idea of the kind of ecological threats that are just around the corner that will be affecting specific countries. So I choose to remain optimistic that this is going to sort of act as a catalyst for more focused and urgent change, particularly in the areas of multilateral cooperation and technological advancement. I think that there could be significant advancements in that particular area, as well as just making the best of the lessons learned that we're learning during the pandemic. We haven't seen the long-term benefits of these things, but I very much look forward to tracking them and to reporting them back to you over time.
Thank you so much, Michael. Armand, over to you. You see the time frame. Go for it.
Thank you. Having very limited time, just want to echo other panelists' voice, like to really tackle this pandemic and all of the obstacles that are in the ways of COVID. We very much strongly believe that we all need to work on equal progress for all of us, inclusive progress, and have a strong collaboration, working together, no matter what SDG are you working for and what organization in whatever sector. So each goal contributes to achievement of another goal. And one's problem becomes another progress problem. So we need to work very much strongly and together. But at the same time, none of these will be possible and will have no result if we do not involve the people for whom these goals are set, for the people for whom we work with. So we need to have these people very much involved at all these different levels, and at the same time, build movements and leaders from these people themselves who know the challenge better than us, who can have the solution at a very much shorter time with a much better solution. We are there to facilitate that. So looking forward for that stronger collaboration and working together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mandy asked me a question, actually. How can we build partnerships during COVID to achieve the SDGs? Well, we're just doing it. We're not waiting for somebody to show us the way. We're not waiting for somebody to say, okay, go now. You know, when the intention is to really want to make that happen, we are just doing it. We are now working with CorvidX Now, Women Empower, Empower Billion Women. And in fact, I was on a call just before this call, and we are doing it. Because even civil society, and in fact, we are working with member states at the UN. And remember that piece I told you earlier about turn your passions into actions for change? Well, we're passionate about the SDGs. We're working with everyone. This is for all people, everybody, no matter where, every spectrum. And we're also working with the schools in Nairobi, Kenya, kids who are in foster care. They're working in a foster school. We're working with everyone. It's up to us, all of us, to get the word out and go beyond the UN. That's why we created the SDG Impact Awards community, so we could show the positive results. Everybody's doing something to make a difference. And we invite you all to be a part of that. We have one more minute. I don't know how that happened. We were all such amazing conversations with all of you. But I just want to say this has been a real pleasure for me to meet all of you. And I thank you all for everything that you're doing in your contributions. Michael, you know, you caught up with us after you got cut off, but you really have so much to contribute also with what you're doing with your studies and your reports. We all need to know what's happening on the ground. It matters. And in Afghanistan, if you haven't met Heidi Kuhn in Roots of Peace, I have to make sure you meet her. And you deserve to know who she is. Again, all of you, I want to thank you. And our program is now over. And let's do it again some other time. I'm going to call on you to come to us. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Goodbye. Thank you.